Welcome to the deep dive. We're stepping into the early months of 2026 right now, and if you've been even passing attention to the tech sector lately, you know we're undergoing a tectonic shift.
Oh, absolutely. It's a massive shift.
Right. We are well past the point of manufacturers just getting on stage to brag about a slightly faster phone or an extra hour of battery. The incremental updates of the early 2020s are, well, they're officially behind us.
Yeah, we are entering what industry insiders are universally calling the agentic first era.
The agentic first era, and that means devices are no longer just tools waiting for your input. They're becoming autonomous agents. And to help you wrap your head around exactly what that means for your daily life, your workflow, and honestly, your wallet, we have compiled a massive stack of sources today.
It's genuinely a fascinating moment to observe the industry. We're looking at a convergence of breakthroughs that usually happen years apart, and they're all landing in the span of just a few weeks.
Yeah, and our source material for this deep dive really reflects that volume. We've secured leaked Geekbench performance metrics that haven't even been fully digested by the mainstream press yet.
We also have internal marketing frameworks from Apple, highly detailed, on-the-ground reporting from the show floor of the massive Mobile World Congress, MWC 2026 over in Barcelona, and some incredibly sharp financial analyses from NASDAQ and Simply Wallseed.
So today we're going to look at two massive interconnected stories dominating those sources. First, there's a fierce debate raging across Wall Street and Silicon Valley right now regarding Apple.
Right, because Apple is pushing this incredibly aggressive AI supercycle narrative.
Exactly. And they're doing it to justify a stock valuation that has frankly detached from historical reality. So our mission today is to figure out if Apple is artificially inflating the capabilities of their new M5 chips just to juice that valuation, or if they've actually engineered an architecture so powerful that it renders previous MacBook Pros and even high-end desktop workstations completely obsolete.
It's a heavy question. And after we settle that, we are going to take you on a curated tour of MWC 2026.
Barcelona just hosted over 100,000 attendees to showcase hardware that feels like it was pulled straight out of a sci-fi novel, alongside network infrastructure that is quietly rewriting how the entire internet functions. Okay, let's unpack this Apple situation first, because the stakes here are astronomically high.
The context surrounding Apple right now is so crucial to understanding the skepticism in the market. Apple just announced their new 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros, powered by their next-generation silicon, the M5 Pro and the M5 Max chips.
But you have to look at this through the lens of the broader financial landscape. Apple's stock is currently hovering around $260.29.
Which gives them a market capitalization of $3.9 trillion.
Just pause on that number for a second. $3.9 trillion. That is a GDP-level valuation. It's larger than the entire economy of the United Kingdom.
It is. And when a company reaches that kind of scale, the pressure from shareholders to demonstrate explosive growth is unrelenting. They can't just say, here's a nice, fast computer.
No, they have to promise a revolution. They have to promise that this new hardware is going to fundamentally change human productivity. And that leads to a massive amount of skepticism, which brings us to the core debate we need to have today.
Right.
I look at that $3.9 trillion valuation. I look at the marketing copy coming out of Cupertino claiming unprecedented AI performance. And I have to ask, are they lying? Are they cooking the books on these performance specs to appease Wall Street and push this AI supercycle narrative? Or does this new M5 architecture genuinely make the hardware sitting on my desk right now obsolete?
It's the most important question in tech finance right now. And to answer it, we have to bypass the marketing copy entirely and look directly at the raw data.
The leaked Geekbench 6 results.
Exactly. Geekbench is a cross-platform processor benchmark that simulates real-world tasks to assign a numerical score to computational performance. And when you analyze these leaked numbers, a very clear empirical picture emerges.
Okay, lay it on us.
They are not inflating the numbers.
Really?
The data is entirely real, and frankly, it defies what many engineers thought was thermally possible in a laptop chassis. Let's look at the M5 Max chip. This specific variant features an 18-core CPU and a 40-core GPU.
That's a lot of cores for a laptop.
It is. And in these leaked tests, the M5 Max hit a single core score of 4,268.
I really want to break down why that specific number of 4,268 is causing such a shockwave. Because if you aren't deeply embedded in processor architecture, it just sounds like arbitrary math.
It does, but single core performance is arguably the most important metric for how a computer actually feels when you use it.
Right. It measures how fast the processor can handle one linear sequential task. When you click an icon to open a heavy application or when a game calculates physics, that is heavily reliant on single-core speed.
And for context, to see a single core score over 4,000 on a consumer device is historically unprecedented.
This laptop chip didn't just beat its predecessor, it completely obliterated the absolute top-tier stationary desktop chips from competitors, including the highly praised AMD Ryzen 9 series.
Chips that require massive cooling towers and draw huge amounts of wall power.
Exactly. To see a battery-powered laptop take the global crown for single-core speed requires a fundamental rethinking of what portable silicon can do. But, and I want to push back on this for a second, Geekbench is a synthetic benchmark. It's a sterile lab test.
That's true.
So just because a chip can sprint for 30 seconds in a lab to get a high single-core score doesn't mean it holds up under sustained real-world workloads, does it?
That is a very fair point of skepticism, and it's exactly why we have to look at the multi-core score and the graphics performance to get the complete picture. The multi-core score for the M5 Max hit 29,233.
And multi-core measures how well the chip handles tasks that can be split into many smaller pieces and processed simultaneously.
Right. Things like rendering a complex 3D animation, compiling millions of lines of code, or exporting a feature-length 4K video. Now, to address the accusation that Apple is artificially juicing their numbers for Wall Street, we can cross-reference these leaked independent scores against Apple's own official marketing claims.
What did they promise?
During their presentation, Apple advertised that the new M5 CPU architecture offers up to a 15% higher multi-threaded performance compared to the previous generation, the M4 Max. They also claimed a 20% higher graphics performance.
And if you run the raw math on the leaked benchmark numbers, it is almost eerie how precise it is.
It's spot on.
The leap from the M4 Max to the M5 Max shows exactly a 14 to 15% CPU boost. And on the graphics side, it shows precisely a 20 to 21% GPU boost, hitting a metal score of 232,718.
What's fascinating here is what that metal score actually means for our listeners. Metal is Apple's proprietary graphics application programming interface, or API. It's the software layer that allows apps to communicate directly with the graphics processing unit.
And a metal score over 230,000 in a laptop is staggering.
It confirms there is absolutely no inflation in their marketing. They promised Wall Street and consumers a very specific, quantifiable leap in performance, and the silicon delivered exactly that margin. They aren't lying to boost the stock. The engineering team actually delivered the physics required to justify the narrative.
So that answers the first part of our debate. They aren't cooking the books. But that leads us to the second, much more disruptive question. Does this make older models completely obsolete?
Obsolescence is a tricky word here.
Right, because usually obsolete means a device is broken, or it can't run modern software, or the battery holds a 10-minute charge. But that isn't what we are talking about here. We are talking about performance obsolescence, and the data in our sources presents a fact that genuinely made me do a double take.
The M3 Ultra comparison.
Yes. This 18-core M5 Max laptop chip just beat the 32-core M3 Ultra desktop chip in multi-core performance.
The implications of that cannot be overstated. The M3 Ultra is the massive piece of silicon that powers the Mac Studio. It is a stationary desktop computer that sits in professional editing bays at Hollywood studios and high-end architectural firms.
And it scores around 27,726 in multi-core tests.
While the M5 Max laptop chip running on a battery just hit 29,233, it is outperforming a workstation from just 2 generations ago that is nearly double the physical CPU cores and is plugged directly into a wall outlet.
This completely flips the historical hierarchy of computing on its head. Since the dawn of the personal computer, there has been an ironclad rule: if you want maximum power, you buy a desktop. If you want portability, you buy a laptop, and you accept that you're getting a compromised, thermally throttled version of a desktop chip.
You accepted the trade-off.
Exactly. But what happens when the trade-off disappears? What happens to the person who spent $6,000 on a massive desktop tower 18 months ago, only to realize a college student sitting in a coffee shop with a MacBook Pro in their backpack actually has more computational power?
It forces the industry to redefine the concept of a professional workstation entirely.
How are they physically achieving this? You can't just shove more power into a thin laptop without it melting through the desk.
You're touching on the thermal limitations of traditional processor design, and that is where Apple's new Fusion architecture comes into play. They haven't just increased the clock speed or added more cores. They have fundamentally redesigned how the different parts of the chip talk to each other.
Okay, how?
The critical innovation in the M5 series is the integration of neural accelerators directly into the GPU pipeline.
I want to make sure we understand that because neural accelerators in the GPU pipeline sounds like deep engineering jargon. Let's break down why that specific architectural choice changes everything for the user.
Traditionally, a computer chip has different sections for different jobs. The CPU handles general instructions, the GPU handles graphics and video, and recently companies added neural processing units, or NPUs, to handle artificial intelligence and machine learning tasks.
Right, the AI boom.
Exactly. In older architectures, if you were editing a video and you wanted to apply an AI-powered effect, say, automatically cutting out a person from the background without a green screen, the data had to travel from the GPU over to the NPU, get processed, and then travel back.
And that travel time creates latency. It creates heat. It wastes energy.
It's like having a factory where the assembly line is in one building, but the quality control department is 3 blocks away, and they have to keep driving the product back and forth in a truck.
That is a perfect analogy. What Apple has done with the Fusion architecture is move the quality control department directly onto the assembly line.
Yes. By embedding the neural accelerators natively inside the graphics processing unit, they have eliminated the travel time. When a creative professional is running a large language model locally on their device or applying incredibly complex AI-driven video color grading in real time, the data doesn't have to bounce across a motherboard,
It's processed in one hyper-efficient unified space.
which drastically reduces the energy required, which means the chip generates far less heat, which is why it can run at maximum speed inside a thin laptop chassis without thermal throttling.
And bringing this back to you, the listener, if you are a filmmaker, an architect, or an engineer, this changes the fundamental geography of your workflow. The processing power that literally required a massive metal box humming under your desk, tethered to a wall outlet, now fits on a tray table on a cross-country flight.
You can render an entire 3D environment while somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, running entirely on a lithium-ion battery.
It means the physical location where high-end professional work can happen is now completely decoupled from traditional office infrastructure.
Which perfectly positions Apple at the absolute zenith of the high-end professional market. They've secured their silicon supremacy at the top. But strategically, capturing the professional market is only half of the equation for a $3.9 trillion company.
This is where it gets really clever.
It really does. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the truly fascinating business move in our sources isn't just the M5 Max. It's what they announced simultaneously to target the exact opposite end of the economic spectrum.
This is where the strategy gets brilliant. While everyone is distracted by the raw horsepower of the M5 Max, Apple quietly dropped a tactical nuke on the budget laptop market. Let's dive into the MacBook Neo.
The Neo.
This is historically significant because it is Apple's most affordable laptop ever. It starts at a base price of $599, and if you are a student or purchasing for an educational institution, it drops to $499.
For over a decade, the conventional wisdom has been that Apple simply does not make cheap products. If you only had $500 to spend, you bought a Chromebook or a plastic Windows machine.
But Apple is now walking directly into that territory. And to be clear, based on the specs we're seeing, this is not some stripped-down, underpowered netbook designed to just browse the web.
Not at all. The hardware specifications for a sub-$600 Apple device are highly aggressive. They've engineered the MacBook Neo around the A18 Pro chip,
Which is incredibly clever supply chain management. They didn't design a new, weak processor for this laptop. They simply imported the exact same cutting-edge silicon that powers the flagship iPhone 16 Pro.
Because they manufacture the A18 Pro in such massive quantities for the iPhone, the economies of scale allow them to drop it into a budget laptop while maintaining their profit margins.
And the physical design of the Neo reflects a massive shift in their target demographic. You are getting a 13-inch liquid retina display pushing 500 nits of brightness and a billion colors.
It features a completely fanless design, which means there are 0 moving parts to break down, and it's completely silent in the classroom.
They're promising up to 16 hours of battery life. And aesthetically, it comes in a range of entirely new colors: blush, indigo, silver, and citrus. The enclosure uses 90% recycled aluminum, pushing their carbon-neutral goals.
It's a very attractive package for the price.
But I'm fascinated by the naming convention here. Apple is famously rigid with its branding. We've had the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro for well over a decade. The word Air perfectly described the thinness. Pro described the target audience, so why introduce the word Neo?
The nomenclature is a very deliberate psychological play. Our sources include an interview with Colleen Nuvielli, who serves as Apple's Director of Mac Product Marketing.
What did she say?
When asked about the name, she stated that they wanted something that felt fun and friendly and fresh to project youth and energy. The word Neo implies something new, a departure from the legacy systems.
They are actively trying to shed the intimidating premium aura of the MacBook Pro and present a device that feels approachable to a younger, highly connected but budget-conscious consumer.
And if you look at the financial and market analysis provided by NASDAQ and Simply Walsing, they view the Neo not just as a new product, but as an incredibly aggressive offensive maneuver.
Historically, Apple has completely ignored the $500 to $800 price band. They willingly surrendered the entire K-12 education market to Google's Chromebooks because they refused to compromise their premium brand image.
The analysts suggest that the Neo is designed to ruthlessly claw back that market share.
So what does this all mean?
It means it's a market share play, but more importantly, it's a global expansion play. The sources specifically highlight the Neo's potential to penetrate emerging markets where Apple has historically struggled due to prohibitive pricing and local import taxes.
They point to the aggressive pricing structure internationally. In India, the Neo is priced at 69,900 rupees. In Brazil, it is 7,299 reals. They are also orchestrating a massive push in Mexico and China.
These are regions with rapidly expanding middle classes. They are highly price-sensitive markets, but the aspirational pull of the Apple brand in these regions is incredibly strong.
I was looking at the demographic data for India, and it illuminates exactly why this is so critical for Apple. India has one of the youngest populations on the planet. Millions of students are entering the digital economy every year.
If you can put a MacBook Neo in the hands of a 14-year-old student in Mumbai for under 70,000 rupees, you aren't just making a hardware sale.
You are acquiring a customer for life. And this is the core of Apple's long game. They don't just want to sell you a piece of aluminum, they want to lock you into the ecosystem.
The ecosystem is the ultimate financial driver. The analysts at Simply Walstate make a profound point. The Neo is essentially a beautifully designed Trojan horse. The initial hardware purchase at $599 might have relatively thin profit margins for Apple, but it serves as the gateway to their services segment.
Let's walk through how that ecosystem trap actually functions in practice. A college student buys the MacBook Neo because it's affordable and looks great. Within a month, their local hard drive is full of photos and projects, so they subscribe to iCloud for extra storage.
It's only a few dollars a month, so they don't think about it.
Then, because they're carrying this laptop around campus, they purchase AppleCare for accidental damage protection. A few months later, they want wireless headphones. They could buy any brand, but they buy AirPods because the H2 chip seamlessly auto-pairs with the MacBook Neo without having to navigate Bluetooth menus.
And eventually, when it's time to upgrade their phone, the friction of switching to Android is too high because they rely on features like iPhone mirroring and universal clipboard on their Neo.
Exactly. Every one of those steps pulls the user deeper into the walled garden, and the financial reality of that walled garden is staggering.
The NASDAQ report notes that Apple's services segment, which includes iCloud, the App Store, Apple Music, and AppleCare, enjoys roughly 75% gross margins.
Compare that to the hardware margins, which sit somewhere around 35%. The goal of the Neo isn't to make money on the laptop. The goal is the global democratization of macOS to feed a services machine that prints high-margin recurring revenue.
It is a brilliantly executed two-pronged attack on the global computing market. With the M5 Max, they are proving undisputed silicon supremacy to the high-end professionals, ensuring that every studio and development house stays loyal.
And with the Neo, they are capturing the global mass market, effectively future-proofing their user base for the next 2 decades.
It's a masterclass in product positioning.
It really is.
Yeah.
Now, while Apple is fundamentally redefining the landscape of personal computing, the rest of the mobile technology world just gathered in Spain to completely reimagine what physical hardware is capable of. I want to transition our focus away from Cupertino and take you to the bustling show floor of Mobile World Congress 2026 in Barcelona.
MWC is always a spectacle.
According to the GSMA, the organization that runs MWC, they saw well over 100,000 attendees this year. It's a massive, sprawling event where every major telecommunications and hardware company on Earth, except Apple, comes to show off their most futuristic tech.
And reading through the on-the-ground dispatches from the event, there's a very clear unifying theme across the industry. The traditional smartphone has officially reached a state of functional maturity.
Functional maturity is a vital concept to grasp if you want to understand the current trajectory of consumer electronics.
Right. For the first 15 years of the smartphone era, every new generation solved a glaring problem. The screens were too low resolution, so they gave us retina displays. The cameras were blurry, so they added multiple lenses. The internet was slow, so they gave us 4G and then 5G.
But today, the basic rectangular slab of glass sitting in your pocket is already objectively excellent. The processor is faster than you need it to be, the OLED screen is flawless, and the battery easily lasts a full day for 99% of daily tasks.
Because that baseline of quality is now universally high across almost all manufacturers, the standard upgrade cycle has stalled. Consumers are holding on to their phones for 4 or 5 years.
Which panics the manufacturers. If your 3-year-old phone works perfectly, why would you spend over $1,000 on a new one?
To convince you to open your wallet, these companies are being forced to innovate in wild, highly specific, and sometimes incredibly disruptive ways just to stand out from the sea of identical glass rectangles.
And nowhere is that desperation for innovation producing more incredible results than in the foldable market. We are finally entering what I would call the foldable equilibrium.
For a long time, the foldable market was defined by immense compromise. The early adopters who bought folding phones had to accept that they were essentially carrying 2 phones glued together.
The devices were thick, they were heavy in the pocket, and because the internal space was taken up by complex hinge mechanisms, the batteries were small, resulting in terrible battery life.
But the hardware showcased at MWC proves that those days are over. The Honor Magic V6 was the undisputed star of the foldable space, taking home the Global Mobile Awards for disruptive device innovation.
The dimensions on the Magic V6 are what make it so disruptive. When this device is fully folded shut, it is only 8.75 millimeters thick. That is roughly the exact same thickness as a standard non-folding flagship phone. You would not know it's a foldable just by holding it in your hand.
And yet, despite being impossibly thin, it packs a massive 6,660 milliamp hour battery.
To put that in perspective, a standard flagship phone today usually maxes out around 5,000 milliamp hours. So Honor has built a phone that is twice as large when unfolded, the exact same thickness when folded, and holds roughly 30% more battery capacity than a traditional phone.
It's wild.
From an engineering perspective, how is that physically possible? Where are they hiding the battery?
They aren't hiding it. They have fundamentally changed the chemistry of the battery itself. This represents a major leap in material science. They've moved away from the traditional lithium-ion architecture that has powered our devices for decades, and they have commercialized silicon-carbon battery technology.
I am fascinated by battery chemistry because it's the ultimate bottleneck for all modern technology. We can build incredibly fast chips, but if we can't power them, they're useless. Help us understand how a silicon-carbon battery achieves this kind of energy density compared to what we have been using.
Think of a battery's anode, the part that stores the lithium ions when the battery is charged, like a parking garage. For decades, we've used graphite to build that parking garage.
Graphite is stable, but it's bulky.
Exactly. It takes up a lot of physical space to store a relatively small amount of energy. Material scientists have known for a long time that silicon is a far superior material for storing lithium ions. Conceptually, silicon can hold up to 10 times more ions than graphite.
It's like replacing a sprawling, single-level parking lot with a 10-story, hyper-efficient automated parking garage.
The problem historically has been that when silicon absorbs those lithium ions, it physically expands. It swells up to 300% of its original size.
And obviously, you cannot have a battery swelling up inside a tightly sealed smartphone chassis. That's a recipe for a catastrophic fire, as the industry has unfortunately learned in the past.
Precisely. The swelling causes the silicon to fracture and degrade incredibly quickly, which is why your battery life would plummet after a few dozen charge cycles. What the engineers at Honor have done is successfully commercialize a stable silicon-carbon composite.
How does the composite help?
They've essentially built a microscopic, flexible scaffolding around the silicon particles that allows them to expand and contract safely without breaking the structural integrity of the battery cell. This breakthrough allows them to pack vastly more energy density into a much thinner physical space.
It's an absolute game changer, not just for thin, foldable phones, but eventually for the entire electric vehicle industry. You no longer have to choose between a thin, elegant device and a device that can comfortably last 2 days on a single charge.
And that level of deeply fundamental hardware innovation isn't just limited to the batteries, it extends right into the camera space.
We are seeing a battle for imaging supremacy at MWC that is completely blurring the lines between a consumer smartphone and a professional, dedicated camera rig. Let's look at the Xiaomi 17 Ultra.
This is a premium device, retailing for around 1,499 euros. Xiaomi has continued their partnership with the legendary German camera manufacturer Leica. They've co-engineered a 200-megapixel periscope telephoto lens.
But the megapixel count isn't the story here. The crazy part is that this smartphone camera features actual mechanical moving lens elements. It physically, optically shifts the glass inside the phone to transition smoothly between a 75mm and a 100mm equivalent focal length.
To appreciate how radical that is, we have to look at how smartphones have handled zooming for the past decade. If you try to zoom in on a standard smartphone, the device usually just performs a digital zoom.
It's essentially taking a normal photo and cropping the center of the image, stretching the pixels, which completely destroys the resolution and makes the photo look like a blurry oil painting.
More advanced phones use multiple fixed lenses and switch between them, using software algorithms to try and blend the transition.
But software interpolation can only do so much. It always looks slightly artificial, especially when it tries to fake depth of field.
That is the crucial difference. By physically moving the high-quality glass elements back and forth inside the phone's chassis, just like the barrel of a traditional DSLR lens moves when you twist it, Xiaomi is allowing users to capture true optical compression.
They are capturing genuine physical depth of field, bypassing the artificial cutout look of software portrait modes. It is delivering the optical physics of a professional camera lens inside a device that fits in your pocket.
And then you have Vivo taking a totally different, perhaps even more aggressive approach with their X300 Ultra. Instead of trying to cram all the complex, moving mechanical parts inside the thin phone chassis, they have fully embraced the concept of a modular phone.
They built a device designed to be physically expanded. You can purchase and attach a massive 400mm Zeiss telephoto extender directly onto the back of the device. At MWC, they were showcasing a literal camera cage accessory.
You slot the phone into this heavy-duty aluminum cage, which provides dual ergonomic hand grips, physical, tactile two-stage shutter buttons, and integrated active cooling fans that blow air across the back of the phone to prevent the processor from overheating when you are shooting continuous 4K high frame rate video in the sun.
It's a profound shift in product philosophy. The smartphone is no longer just a phone that happens to have a very good camera. It's becoming the central computing hub of a modular filmmaking ecosystem.
They're adopting the exact same accessory-driven business model that mirrorless camera manufacturers have relied on for years.
And that has to be absolutely terrifying for traditional camera companies like Canon, Nikon, or Sony. For years, the smartphone cannibalized the cheap point-and-shoot camera market. Then, as computational photography improved, they destroyed the entry-level DSLR market.
Now, with devices like the modular Vivo X300 Ultra and the mechanically shifting Xiaomi 17 Ultra, they are coming directly for the high-end prosumer mirrorless market.
If you were an amateur filmmaker or a travel vlogger, why would you spend $3,000 on a bulky camera body and another $1,000 on lenses when you can buy a premium modular smartphone that shoots comparable optical quality, automatically backs up the 4K footage to the cloud over a 5G network, and allows you to edit and publish the video directly from the device?
The traditional camera companies are being squeezed into an incredibly narrow, ultra-professional niche. The consolidation of hardware is relentless.
But beyond the cameras and the batteries, another major focus on the show floor at MWC was the interface we interact with the most, the display itself. And specifically, the conversation has shifted heavily toward eye comfort and hardware-level health features.
For anyone listening to this deep dive who stares at screens for 8 to 10 hours a day, which is basically all of us at this point, this development is incredibly relevant.
We all know that staring at vibrant blue light-emitting screens all day causes massive eye strain, disrupts circadian rhythms, and causes headaches. TCL tackled this problem head-on at MWC. They showcase their new NXT Paper 4.0 and SuperPixel technology.
They have a new flagship phone called the NXT Paper 70 Pro, and what makes it unique is a physical tactile slider switch on the side of the device.
You flick the switch, and the screen physically and instantly transitions between a vibrant color paper mode, a muted, low-contrast ink paper mode, and a stark black and white Max Ink mode that makes the screen look exactly like a dedicated e-reader.
The technological leap here is how they're achieving that effect. Historically, to get that matte, anti-glare paper-like finish, manufacturers had to use LCD panels.
And the trade-off with LCD is that you sacrifice the deep, true blacks, the infinite contrast, and the premium vibrancy of an OLED screen.
But TCL has figured out how to bring this NXT paper technology directly to high-end AMOLED displays.
I want to dig into the physics of how they are managing to make a glossy, light-emitting OLED screen look like a piece of matte paper. The source notes mention they are combining circular polarization with hardware-level blue light reduction. I think a lot of people know what a polarized sunglass lens does, but how does circular polarization work on a smartphone screen?
It's a brilliant application of optics. Imagine traditional light from a screen bouncing wildly in all directions. When that light hits the glare of the sun, it washes out the image and strains your eyes.
Right.
Circular polarization essentially forces the light waves emitted by the OLED panel to travel in a spiraling corkscrew pattern. When ambient light from the room or the sun hits the screen, the polarizing layer traps the reflection, preventing the glare from bouncing back into your eyes.
When you combine that physical optical filter with a hardware-level shift that cuts the blue light frequencies at the source, rather than just using a yellow software tint, the result is profound.
You get the soothing, strain-free eye comfort of reading a paperback book, without sacrificing the premium high refresh rate vibrancy you expect from a flagship smartphone when you want to watch a movie. It's a massive quality of life upgrade.
It's all about using advanced hardware to solve very human physiological problems. And it wasn't just TCL focusing on this. Even Samsung, the undisputed king of mobile displays, prioritized human-centric screen tech.
Their Galaxy S26 Ultra won the Jalome Award for Best in Show, and while it has all the usual processor upgrades, one of its standout features is an incredibly innovative privacy display function.
We have all experienced the anxiety of someone shoulder surfing, looking over your shoulder on a crowded train or in a cafe while you are reading a private text message or checking your banking app. Samsung's new screen can selectively hide specific sections of the display from onlookers.
They are utilizing advanced directional pixel technology. The screen can actively angle the light emitted by specific pixels. You can highlight a notification or a private chat window, and the screen will narrow the viewing angle of just those specific pixels to a few degrees.
To you, looking straight at the phone, the screen looks perfectly normal. But to someone sitting next to you on a flight, that specific text message box simply appears as a blank, dark rectangle, while the rest of the screen remains visible.
It shows an acute awareness of how our relationship with technology is changing. As our devices become the central repositories for our entire financial, personal, and professional lives, physical privacy from onlookers in public spaces is no longer a niche paranoid concern. It's becoming a highly sought-after premium feature.
Now, while the smartphone market is refining these highly specific human problems, the real Wild West of innovation at MWC was happening on our wrists, on our faces, and in the factories. Let's pivot our analysis to the wearable resurgence, the battle over smart glasses, and what I like to call the rugged anti-trend.
The wearable space, particularly smartwatches, is currently experiencing a massive overdue silicon upgrade. For years, smartwatch processors have lagged significantly behind phones.
But at MWC, Qualcomm formally introduced the Snapdragon Wear Elite chip. This is a processor built on a cutting-edge 3-nanometer fabrication process, and it utilizes a big, little architecture.
I see the term big. Little e thrown around constantly in tech spec sheets, but we should clearly define how it actually impacts the user wearing the watch.
I know broadly it means combining powerful cores with weak cores, but how does that actually save my smartwatch battery from dying halfway through the day?
It's an architecture designed entirely around aggressive power management. Imagine a hybrid car that uses a small electric motor for cruising slowly through a neighborhood, but fires up a massive V8 gas engine only when you slam on the accelerator to merge onto a highway.
That's the big little e architecture.
Exactly. The processor pairs large, high-performance computational cores, the big ones, with smaller, highly power-efficient cores, the little ones. The operating system intelligently and instantaneously switches between them depending on the exact demand of the task.
If you raise your wrist just to check the time or read a static notification, the system routes that task exclusively to the little core, which sips a microscopic amount of battery power.
But if you tap a button and ask your on-device AI assistant a complex question that requires natural language processing, the big core fires up for a fraction of a second to do the heavy lifting, then immediately shuts down.
Qualcomm promises this dynamic switching results in a 5x boost in single-core performance without sacrificing battery life.
And the industry implications of Qualcomm achieving that kind of performance leap are massive.
Hmm.
According to the reports we have from the show floor, Samsung is taking a very drastic step. They are entirely dropping their own in-house Exynos chip to use this new Snapdragon Wear Elite chip for their next generation of Galaxy watches.
That is a huge shift in the Silicon Wars. Samsung is a massive conglomerate. They manufacture their own chips specifically to control their supply chain and maximize profits.
They rarely, if ever, abandon their own hardware division, unless the external alternative from a company like Qualcomm is so light years ahead that using their own chip would make their watches uncompetitive.
It signals that Android smartwatch performance is about to take a quantum leap forward.
And they're going to need every ounce of that processing power, especially when we look at the explosion of smart glasses. MWC showcased a huge philosophical battle currently raging in the eyewear space.
It's a war between AI-first glasses and AR-first augmented reality glasses. They look similar, but they are trying to solve entirely different problems.
On the AI side, the standout was the XGMI MemoMind 1. These frames are AI first. They don't project massive holographic screens. Instead, they run a highly sophisticated, multi-LLM hybrid operating system that serves as a constantly listening, constantly analyzing co-pilot for your life.
The software routing on the MemoMind 1 is particularly clever. 4 years ago, everyone was just using one monolithic AI like ChatGPT. But the MemoMind 1 doesn't rely on a single model.
It has a context engine that constantly analyzes what you were looking at through the onboard camera and what you were asking via the microphones, and it automatically routes your query to the specific AI model best suited for that exact task.
It's the definition of seamless intelligence. If you are looking at a complex piece of Python code on a monitor and ask the glasses to debug it, the operating system instantly routes that visual data to Microsoft's Azure AI, which specializes in coding.
If you were walking down the street and ask for a creative writing prompt, it routes to OpenAI. If you ask it to translate a localized sign while walking through a market in Shenzhen, it routes to Alibaba's Qwen model.
The user doesn't have to open different apps. The glasses act as an intelligent switchboard, orchestrating multiple AI brains in real time right on your face.
That is the AI-first approach. But on the exact opposite side of the spectrum, you have devices like the Ray Neo Air 4 Pro, which take an AR-first approach.
These glasses don't particularly care about artificial intelligence. They just want to manipulate your visual reality. For an incredibly accessible price point of just $299, the Ray Neo glasses use micro OLED projectors to beam a 201-inch HDR10 virtual cinema screen directly into your field of vision.
It tracks your head movement so the screen stays locked in physical space.
You are essentially strapping a premium immersive home theater or a massive multi-monitor workstation to your face for the price of a cheap budget television.
The contrast between those two devices perfectly illustrates the experimental phase the wearable industry is in right now. They are throwing incredibly advanced, sleek, invisible technology at the wall to see what consumers actually want to wear on their faces.
But amidst all of this sleek, minimalist design, MWC always manages to deliver some absolutely unhinged brute force engineering, and that brings us to what you called the rugged anti-trend.
Yes.
I genuinely love this device so much. Amidst a sea of companies trying to make the thinnest, most delicate glass devices possible, I was laughing out loud reading the dispatch about the Alcatel WP63.
This is a company that looked at the thin and light trend and completely refused to participate.
The WP63 features a 20,000 milliamp hour battery. Just for reference, the Honor Foldable we talked about had a massive 6,600 milliamp battery, and a normal iPhone has about 4,000. The thing has 20,000. It is not a phone. It's a cinder block with a touchscreen on it.
It has a built-in industrial-grade campaign light on the back that could probably blind a bear.
And my absolute favorite feature, it has a literal physical electric heating element built into the back casing, designed specifically to let you start a fire in the wilderness. It is survival gear first and an Android smartphone second. Can you imagine the sheer comedy of trying to get through TSA airport security with a device that has a literal electric stove built into it?
The TSA would absolutely confiscate it. But the WP63 is a perfect reminder that highly specific, extreme niche use cases still command a very vibrant, profitable market. People who work on offshore oil rigs, deep-sea fishermen, or extreme mountaineers do not care about a phone being 8 millimeters thick. They care about survival.
But if we take that concept of extreme rugged environments and transition from the wilderness outdoors to massive automated environments indoors, we reach one of the most important enterprise showcases at MWC. The industrial robotics this year were incredibly sophisticated.
The AGBot G2 humanoid robot drew massive crowds. It is a bipedal robot capable of incredibly fine motor tasks. But the robot itself wasn't the most important part of the demonstration. It was the invaluable infrastructure supporting it.
Right. You can build the most advanced humanoid robot on the planet, but if it can't communicate instantaneously with the central factory server, it is useless or worse, dangerous.
At MWC, China Telecom partnered with ZTE to showcase the Easion 5Ga RobotNet. This is an intelligent, ultra-low latency network backbone specifically designed and optimized to coordinate swarms of humanoid robots on massive factory floors.
We have to contrast this with how normal networks operate to understand why this is a breakthrough. If you are watching Netflix on your home Wi-Fi and the network drops a packet of data, your movie buffers for a millisecond. You barely notice it.
But on a factory floor, you cannot have a warehouse full of 500-pound robots swinging heavy metal arms relying on a patchy, best-effort Wi-Fi signal. If a data packet drops there, a robot fails to stop, and it causes a catastrophic accident involving human workers. They require what engineers call a deterministic network.
Let's use an analogy to explain a deterministic network, because that is a dense networking concept. If a standard Wi-Fi network is like a busy public highway where traffic jams happen unpredictably and everyone just has to deal with the delay, what is a deterministic network?
A deterministic network is like building a private, concrete-walled VIP lane on that highway. The network guarantees, with mathematical certainty, that a specific piece of data will arrive at its exact destination within a guaranteed microsecond time frame, regardless of how much other traffic is on the broader network.
Traffic jams in that specific lane are mathematically impossible.
The Easion 5Ga network guarantees that deterministic connection wirelessly over 5G. It allows the heavy computational brain of the robot to be offloaded to a central server in the factory, while the physical robot just executes the commands instantaneously. It is the infrastructure required to make the automated factories of the future actually safe and functional.
Here's where it gets really interesting. That transition from the physical robot to the invisible network providing its brain leads us perfectly to the final and arguably most important segment of our deep dive.
The physical hardware we saw at MWC is stunning. But the true revolution is happening in the invisible airwaves around us.
We are officially moving away from the era of the mobile internet and entering the era of the Internet of Agents, or the IOA.
The Internet of Agents represents a fundamental reimagining of what a telecommunications network actually is. For the past 25 years, telecom networks, the cell towers built by Verizon, Vodafone, AT&T, have essentially operated as dumb pipes.
Their only job was to take a packet of data from your phone and shove it to a server as fast as possible without caring what that data actually was.
But now, driven by the massive processing power required for AI, telecoms are transforming their networks into active, intelligent AI infrastructure. The network is beginning to think for itself.
A perfect example of this is the announcement from Huawei regarding voice calls. Huawei's data claims that currently 35% of all mobile calls globally suffer from significant disruptive noise interference, wind, traffic, background chatter.
In the dumb pipe era, the network just transmitted that loud wind noise directly into your ear. But Huawei is now deploying an AI pure voice standard operating directly at the network level.
The AI agent sitting on the cell tower actively analyzes the audio stream, filters out the wind noise, isolates the human voice, and reconstructs the clean audio before it ever reaches the recipient's phone.
It is the network actively intervening to improve the reality of the digital signal.
But intervening in real time requires immense computational power. A cell tower is no longer just a radio antenna. It has to be a supercomputer. And to power this Internet of Agents, telecom operators are having to build infrastructure on a scale we have never seen.
SK Telecom, the South Korean giant, used MWC to announce a push for 1 gigawatt class hyperscale AI data centers.
A gigawatt is a hard number to conceptualize. 1 gigawatt of electricity is enough power to comfortably run a medium-sized American city of about 300,000 people.
SK Telecom is building single data center campuses that draw the power of an entire city, dedicating every single electron entirely to AI computation to manage these agentic networks. The complexity of running a network that massive and intelligent is beyond human capability. A human engineer cannot manually route traffic across an AI network of that scale.
Which is exactly why Google stepped into the spotlight at MWC. Google is providing the software layer to help these telcos manage this impossible complexity. They announced new agentic AI tools that allow telecom operators to build digital twins of their entire physical network.
A digital twin is an incredibly cool concept. This is exactly what it sounds like, a perfectly accurate, simulated virtual replica of the massive, sprawling physical network architecture. Every cell tower, every fiber optic cable, every data center is modeled in software.
Why is that useful? Because before a telecom operator rolls out a massive, risky software update or changes how data traffic flows across a country, they don't test it on the live network. They deploy Google's AI agents into the digital twin.
These AI agents simulate the chaotic behavior of millions of human users in real time. They predict points of failure, they simulate what happens if a physical fiber cable is cut during a storm, and they optimize the upgrade path mathematically before a single line of new code ever touches the real-world network.
It's basically an incredibly complex virtual sandbox where the AI plays out every possible disaster scenario and fast forward, ensuring the real network never goes down.
It is the ultimate preventative maintenance tool. But as these terrestrial networks on Earth get smarter and more complex, the industry is simultaneously executing a massive, aggressive push into the final frontier of connectivity space.
The push for satellite to mobile connectivity, formerly known as non-terrestrial networks or NTN, was absolutely everywhere at MWC. Historically, satellite connectivity on a smartphone was a hyper-niche feature. If you had it, it was purely for emergency SOS text messages when you were lost in the woods with a broken leg.
You had to point your phone directly at the sky, hold perfectly still, and pray a satellite passed overhead. But now, thanks to the ratification of the new 3GPP Release 18 standards, this technology is scaling out of the emergency phase and into daily commercial viability.
For those unfamiliar, the 3GPP is the global consortium that writes the rules for how mobile telecommunications work. Release 18 is essentially a massive global rulebook update that fundamentally alters how a standard 5G smartphone operates.
It allows the silicon inside a normal phone to treat a satellite orbiting hundreds of miles in space exactly the same way it treats a standard cell tower sitting down the street. It enables completely seamless, invisible roaming between the terrestrial networks on Earth and the low Earth orbit constellations in space.
And the major global players are making massive geopolitical and financial moves to secure this orbital real estate. We saw Vodafone team up with Amazon's Project Kuiper, utilizing their low Earth orbit satellites to guarantee blanket coverage across all of Europe and Africa, eliminating dead zones in rural areas entirely.
SpaceX and Deutsche Telekom solidified a massive partnership to bring robust satellite mobile service to all of Europe by 2028. And the GSMA, alongside the European Space Agency, announced a €100 million joint fund specifically designed to push the convergence of AI, non-terrestrial networks, and the early foundational research for 6G technology.
They're spending billions to build an invisible web around the planet.
This raises an important question, which Margherita Della Valle, the CEO of Vodafone, pointed out in a very stark warning during a keynote address. She warned the industry that space is currently operating as a Wild West. Everyone, from sovereign nations to private billionaires, is launching massive constellations consisting of thousands of satellites.
They are beaming powerful radio signals down to Earth, completely ignoring national borders from space. She is urgently calling for international global governance and strict regulation.
And her concerns are entirely valid. If the sky is literally going to become our new cell tower, who controls the radio spectrum? Who dictates which country gets priority over specific frequencies?
And perhaps most pressingly, who is responsible for cleaning up the orbital debris? We are launching so much metal into low Earth orbit that we are risking Kessler syndrome, a scenario where one satellite collision creates a cloud of shrapnel that destroys other satellites, creating a cascading chain reaction that could render low Earth orbit completely unusable for generations.
It is a massive geopolitical and regulatory minefield that the tech industry is barreling into at full speed.
It's a precarious situation. But while the massive telecom companies and aerospace billionaires fight brutal, capital-intensive wars over launching rockets and controlling the orbital infrastructure, Apple has already quietly figured out how to win the ultimate prize, the software war.
The Apple Gambit in space.
Yeah.
This is brilliant, and it perfectly connects everything we have talked about today, from the M5 chips to the ecosystem trap of the MacBook Neo, right up to the satellites.
Let's look at what Apple recently did. They opened their proprietary satellite API framework to third-party software developers. This means that everyday applications you already use, like WhatsApp, Signal, or even basic banking apps, can now natively send and receive encrypted messages via satellite when you lose cell service, without you ever having to open a clunky, special satellite mode app provided by your carrier.
And that is the absolute brilliance of Apple's strategic positioning. The legacy telecom companies and the satellite operators are spending tens of billions of dollars to launch physical rockets, maintain orbital trajectories, and build the orbital roads. They're taking all the physical and financial risk.
But Apple is building the luxury car that drives on those roads. By integrating satellite connectivity natively and invisibly into the iOS software ecosystem, Apple ensures that the user's primary relationship remains entirely with their iPhone and their apps, not with the underlying network provider.
The vast majority of the economic value is migrating away from the company providing the dumb network signal and moving straight up the stack into Apple's walled garden software ecosystem. It's checkmate.
It is a masterclass in platform leverage. Okay, we have covered an immense, frankly dizzying amount of ground in this deep dive. Let's take a moment to summarize the astonishing pace of innovation we are seeing in early 2026.
We started in Cupertino, examining Apple's M5 Max chip. We saw the leaked Geekbench data proving that they have successfully leveraged their Fusion architecture to literally rewrite the rules of hardware obsolescence, creating a laptop that effortlessly crushes the multi-core benchmarks of a 32-core desktop workstation from just 2 years ago.
We analyzed the aggressive financial strategy behind the MacBook Neo, Apple's $599 Trojan horse. We explored how they're using flagship silicon and recycled materials to aggressively attack the budget market, aiming to democratize macOS globally and pull millions of young, budget-conscious users in emerging markets into their highly profitable, inescapable services ecosystem.
We took you to the chaotic, brilliant floor of MWC 2026 in Barcelona. We discussed the reality of functional maturity in smartphones and how it is forcing wild innovations. We looked at Honor solving the foldable battery problem with silicon-carbon chemistry.
We saw Xiaomi and Vivo threatening traditional camera giants with physical mechanical lenses and modular camera cages. We explored TCL and Samsung using advanced optics like circular polarization and directional pixels to protect our eyes and our privacy.
We examined the wearable and robotic space, noting the critical shift to big, little architecture in smartwatches and the deployment of deterministic, ultra-low latency 5G networks to safely orchestrate humanoid robots on factory floors.
And finally, we explored the invisible revolution occurring above us. We detailed how telecom networks are transforming into a self-diagnosing Internet of Agents via Google's digital twins, while the frantic, unregulated race to build a ubiquitous, space-based, non-terrestrial network is turning low Earth orbit into the next great, highly contested infrastructure battleground.
And after all of those specs, benchmarks, and corporate strategies, the most important question is, why should you care about any of this? Why does it matter to your life? Because these aren't just abstract, distant concepts.
This is the fundamental architecture of your daily reality being rebuilt from the ground up right now. From a $599 laptop in India that instantly connects a student to the global digital economy, to an invisible, space-based internet that ensures you are never truly off the grid no matter where you travel, high-end, transformative technology is being rapidly democratized and aggressively, quietly automated.
It represents a profound philosophical shift in how we interact with the world. We are moving away from an era of discrete tools that we must actively operate and into an era of ambient agentic environments that anticipate our needs and manipulate our reality for us.
Exactly. And that leaves us with a final, lingering, and somewhat provocative thought for you to mull over as you go about your day. If our physical, portable devices now possess the raw silicon power of yesterday's stationary supercomputers, and our global networks are evolving to operate completely autonomously as an internet of agents making complex routing decisions, filtering the noise of our reality, and optimizing our digital lives in real time before we even ask, where does that leave us? Are we still the active operators, the masters of our technology, directing it where to go? Or, as we plunge deeper into this new agentic era, are we simply becoming the passive beneficiaries of a machine-run world, happily living inside a digital twin we can no longer comprehend? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the tech around you, keep looking for the bigger picture behind the marketing, and we will see you next time.